Now, the issue we have with smart contracts today, as of today, is that they are not fully connected with the real world, right? Blockchain technology is a siloed technology, which means you have miners, you have validators, which basically agree on the state of the network. They come to consensus on a certain state. For Ethereum, for Bitcoin, but they're not coming to a consensus on the state of a data point, right? They won't be able to fetch you the price of gold, for instance, or the weather in Berlin today. That's not something that's accessible on the blockchain right now. All the blockchain does is keep an amount of transaction, keep a ledger about the amount of transactions, about the past state of the past state, basically. Now, what you're trying to do at Chainlink is, we believe that smart contracts have tremendous potential, right? And we also believe that smart contracts, in order to fulfill this potential, need to be connected to real-world data. Now, real-world data is, for instance, market data, being able to connect to Bloomberg, to Reuters. It's payment processor data. Not everyone wants to be paid in crypto. Actually, most people we prefer to avoid the volatility. So being able to access payment processor, just like PayPal, for instance, just like Swift, it's basically having inputs and outputs be accessible to smart contracts. So from a smart contract, I can get the price of gold, and I can maybe trigger a payment using PayPal. That's the idea. And we believe that currently, without these inputs and outputs, the space is extremely restricted, right? Basically, before DeFi, all we had was CryptoKitties, for instance. You know, it was tokenizing stuff and exchanging it between peers. It's a great use case, but it's not really fulfilling the promise of blockchain, right? That's not what we signed up for. We signed up for a bit more. So now, just to walk you through the kind of state and the evolution of the ecosystem. In 5 years, when basically from having multi-sigs, where basically you have multiple signers, whenever you get a number of signatures, you can trigger a transaction, to having protocol smart contracts. So in order to have a smart contract being enforced, and in order to add new capabilities to a blockchain, you had to change the underlying protocol. You had to code up your new changes to the protocol in itself, which, you know, with all the big risks that came with it, with changing the underlying protocol, it wasn't that great, right? Now, what happened with Ethereum was that anyone could deploy a smart contract in 5 minutes without ever changing the underlying code on which the platform relies on, right? So if you wrote a good smart contract, a good platform that people want to use, then perfect. And if your smart contract was flawed, well, no one was forced to use it, right? So it never threatens the protocol in itself, right? So that was a 10x improvement compared to what existed before. And this allowed for a lot of stuff to happen, right? That's when we saw the kind of 2017 craze where people started tokenizing, creating tokens out of nowhere and started trading them between each other. However, there was a big flaw into the system, which is basically not being able to access real-world data, right? And can you rebuild the financial system? Can you rebuild insurance? Can you rebuild supply chain? All of this stuff on blockchain without real-world data? No, you can't, basically. So our vision at Chainlink and the way we think the space is going to evolve is having smart contracts which can easily connect to API endpoints. And now, to do this, for instance, is connecting to basically market data, as I said, connecting to payment processors, and of course, connecting to other blockchains. So the way I would think of it is currently we are in an extremely siloed ecosystem. It kind of resembles the days of the intranet, right? Where you had a private network and you had multiple private networks which weren't communicating. Now, that was still useful, but it wasn't great, right? And where we see the value, where we see the ecosystem thriving, is when you create bridges between all of these networks. And what I would say more is when you create a bridge between the real world and blockchain technology. That's when you see the value really coming, basically. So now, there is a caveat to this. Whenever people start working with smart contracts, it's usually for a good reason, right? Maybe you want transparency, maybe you want more security, maybe you want a system which doesn't have friction like we can have in the real world. For instance, if you have DeFi, then you will be able, I mean, I'm sure you guys use it. If you go to Compound, if you go to Aave, if you go to all of these platforms, you can already start earning interest on your crypto without having to, do a KYC process, talk to your banker, all of this stuff, right? And to kind of allow for this, what we have is a decentralized network, right, where no one can stop you for doing what you need to do. And we believe that if you're going to create a connected smart contract, which basically can access real-world data, which can access payment processors, and all of this great stuff, right, you need to keep up the guarantees that smart contracts offer. Basically, it doesn't make sense for us to have a decentralized computation platform with nodes securing it from all over the world, be fed data from a single oracle, right? This doesn't make sense. End-to-end reliability is extremely important. And if you go to a CIO or a CTO and basically you propose this kind of architecture where you have one centralized node feeding data to a decentralized network, then it's a very flawed architecture, right? So what we try to do at Chainlink is connect the real world with blockchain technology while still keeping out very important properties. The first property on which your entire space relies on is decentralization, right? Today you trust Bitcoin, you trust Ethereum because you have multiple nodes across the world which are distributed across many geographies which come to agreement on the state of the blockchain, right? What we believe we should have to feed data and to feed reliable endpoints to the smart contracts, we should have multiple nodes from all over the world which come into consensus, into agreement on the state of the data, right? So basically here you're just replacing coming into consensus on the state of the blockchain with coming to consensus on the state of the data which you're going to feed to these smart contracts. So I have 10 nodes which are feeding the price of gold, for instance, or of silver, and they come to consensus on the state of the price, basically. Then you have binding service agreements where basically you have some kind of SLA. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with SLA, and you publish this SLA on-chain. The way it would be smart contract creator wants a certain data endpoint. He wants to access a certain data, right? He's going to publish a contract which says, all right, I need this API endpoint. I need to be fed every 5 minutes some information. Basically, a node operator will then commit to fulfilling this agreement. He will commit on-chain. So here you're basically leveraging the properties of blockchain technologies, which is when someone agrees to do something on-chain, then you have an on-chain commitment, right? You can trace it. You can see what happened. You have a proof, basically, that this happens. So if the node operator, for some reason, goes down or doesn't really provide the data he should be providing, then you'll have a proof of it. And of course, through this, you can have reliability because you can see the history of the operators, you can track their reputation, you can see when they went down, basically using the properties I mentioned. Then we apply defense in depth. Also, what defense in depth allows is running the Chainlink software into an enclave. Basically, I'm probably not going to go into the definition of TEs just for the sake of time, but yeah, it's basically another guarantee which is more hardware based, while we can have properties which can be more kind of crypto-economic based, for instance, where it's staking, which I'm going to get to a bit later on. And the last one is actually having a large open source community. So this network effect which kind of form up, like for instance for Ethereum, really come up from a community, right? A community which is dedicated, which is always researching, which is always kind of evangelizing the network. I think as we get more and more people around the project, so more node operators, more people who know how to run nodes, for instance, which we have a great bunch here already, and we get more and more smart people who get committed into the project, we get better guarantees of its success, basically. A community can improve anything that's network effect related, that's security related, all of this great stuff. So then, I probably won't go into this because I think I'm already running out of time. I have 116 slides, so if you want to talk later, I'm a great person for this. Okay. The stuff I wanted to go into now, which has already been exciting us a lot, and maybe the reason I sound tired because this stuff takes a lot of time, but it's the stuff we've been doing really for the past few weeks, few months. I'm sure you've all heard of DeFi, right? So DeFi, I like to kind of define it as if you've been in crypto for 2-3 years, you are kind of like a man walking in the desert, you know. And for me, DeFi is the oasis. It's the stuff which is really getting usage, which people started using today, and which has a lot of potential. Like I think a few months ago, we had maybe 10-15 million volume on DeFi platforms, except Baker, of course. But you didn't have that much of a big movements there, right? And now I think if you go into DeFi Pulse, you might have a volume of $900 million being secured by DeFi platforms. Not volume, but value secured by the smart contracts. I think basically what DeFi shows is that crypto really has a world-changing potential, and we want to make sure that we are able to kind of strengthen this movement and help it where it needs to be helped, basically. I think DeFi and financial platforms intuitively need data, right? They need market data, they need IoT data, they need all of this stuff to kind of succeed, right? One of the most important use cases we've seen in DeFi recently is the need for reliable price feeds. And when I say reliable, it's also transparent, it's also decentralized. Some of these DeFi dApps can basically trigger liquidation, they can trigger margin calls, they can trigger a lot of stuff, which whenever it happens, the user will want to know why it happens, right? As they don't want to have a kind of a closed source oracle, which is running in the background of this dApp, and which can liquidate your assets at any point, right? You need transparency, you need security as a user in DeFi, and of course, as a dApp provider, because what happens if you're responsible for, like it happened for Synthetics, for instance, which had an outage maybe 6 or 7 months ago, where one of their oracle went down, right? Not went down, but the value got corrupted, basically. And this threatens the whole system, right? Now, whenever it comes to oracles and the underlying infrastructure behind it, I like to compare it to a blockchain, right? Let's say you were a dApp developer and you wanted to create a new dApp. Would you spin up your new blockchain? Would you spin up from scratch a new smart contract platform on which to build up? Probably not, right? Because it needs a lot of security, it needs to build up the network, it needs to have a token economy behind it. Basically a lot of stuff you need to work on, and which, if you don't do it right, could pose a lot of problems, right? Well, it's very similar to oracles for me. Just like if you are a dApp developer and you want to create your own dApp, you're probably not going to spin up a new blockchain. You're going to use Ethereum, you're going to use Cosmos, Polkadot, Tezos, whichever fits your needs. Well, for oracles, it's the same thing. You're not going to spin up your own oracle, you're going to use Chainlink, basically, as a decentralized oracle network. And that's what we've been seeing more and more recently. So we've just published a landing page today, which you guys can check out. It's feeds.chain.link. And basically, we now have 25 contracts on mainnet, which feeds the price of, let's say, gold, silver, crypto prices, and many different pairs. And currently, that's what the reference contract looks like. It's basically multiple node operators which are distributed around the world. So for instance, we have many here, but we have others in China, we have others in the US. And basically, these node operators are blockchain infrastructure companies, which means they have security backgrounds, they have DevOps backgrounds, and they've been running blockchain software as a living for a long time already, right? And these people are accessing multiple endpoints and feeding the data to a smart contract on Ethereum. And that's how you get the price of ETH/USD right now, for instance, using Chainlink. Now, these smart contracts are not, just there and not being used. They're actually today securing more than $150 million of value, with 4 main users who are using them today on mainnet. The main one is really Synthetics. Synthetics need the data for their FX and commodity prices. We are providing this data with one of the reference contracts I showed you earlier. And basically, they're now going to move also to having all their price feeds being fed by Chainlink oracles. So it's not going to be only FX and commodity, but it will go to all the price feeds they need being served by us. Same for Loopring, which needed basically to secure their staking for their relayers. Same for Ampleforce, which needed a couple of important endpoints to basically determine the elastic supply of their commodity tokens. And same for Aave, which went live, I think, 2 weeks ago. And actually, Aave is very, it really shows what I was discussing about DeFi. Like the thing went live 2 weeks ago. and it has $7 million on their liquidity pool already, right? I mean, that's pretty crazy. Like a few months ago, it would take maybe 5 months to get anything to handle $7 million. Now it went in 2 weeks. So you can see the growth there. And Aave is securing their 15 crypto prices using Chainlink oracles. So yeah, that's basically, I'm probably going to end the talk here because I think I already ran past my time. But that's what I wanted to kind of demonstrate, right? Like a few months ago when I was talking about Chainlink, all I had was kind of a vision, right? But we didn't have really users using it today. And I think today, after a lot of work from everyone, not only the team, but also the community, and a lot of node operators here are securing these feeds and are monitoring them day and night to make sure nothing goes down. Well, in 5 months, we went from not securing that much to securing all of this value on chain, and I think it will only grow. And the reason I think it will only grow is because the DeFi space and the kind of ecosystem as a whole, for me, is probably going to experience a massive upside in the coming months. I think more and more people are realizing the potential of DeFi. It's kind of world-changing impact, and I feel very grateful to be at Chainlink and kind of have this occasion to support this huge movement, because I think in a few years we'll be looking at these times and kind of think this was historical, this really changed the world. So yeah. Anyways, sorry, I was a bit drizzled for this presentation, long flight, but thank you very much for hearing me out, and if you have any questions, happy to take them.